Property transaction. This is Property Matters, brought to you by Ascent Realty and supported by Ascent Radio. I'm your host again, Destiny Unwante Ijibo. Today I'll be taking you through another very interesting topic, and today we are going to be looking at property ownership options, a company or individual ownership. The topic again is property ownership options, a company or individual ownership. So today, as we always do, we start by telling a brief story. And today we have Adeola Okoje, who is a very good entrepreneur who has been recording huge successes in recent time, and the business has been picking up very smoothly, and she intends to expand her business. She has been in a rented apartment, but now she wants to move into her own property. Like I told you, she's a very industrious person, an entrepreneur that is growing very quickly. Now, the issue she's having is, how am I going to acquire a property? I have a viable business now. Should I buy this property in my own name, or I should acquire this property in my business name or in the company's name? Mind you, this person is one who has a company that is registered, and this company is thriving. She wants to get a house, not just the business apartments or business premises, also her own property that she will be residing as a business owner. She's now considering, should I buy both the property that we do in my business and my own residential property as well? Should I buy them in my own name or in the name of the company? These are the issues that she has been trying to solve for a very long time now, since she started conceiving purchasing her own property. What are the options open to her? Are you going to advise her to purchase this property in her own name, or you are going to advise her to purchase it in her company name? Let's first of all talk about land transaction. What is land transaction? What is property transaction? When you talk about sale of land, because the interest here is to purchase, she has been in a rented apartment, she wants to purchase. But sale of land is about the sale of a property by a property owner, transferring his title, transferring his ownership, his rights over the property to another person, who in this case is the purchaser. Now we now have the vendor and the purchaser, sometimes referred to as the seller and the buyer. Now the buyer is willing to let go of his property for a consideration, which is the money that will be paid to the person who is the owner of that property. Now, when we are talking about real estate, which is the focus of this our talk today on this session, is transfer of ownership from one person to the other. And this transfer on ownership, it could be a developed apartment, it could be a bare land, or something, usually immovable property. That's what we discuss here on this channel. Immovable property, that's our focus here. Now, this person wants to acquire an immovable property for the purpose of her business and her residential use as well. What options that are open to her are what to be considering. Again, the two options that are open to her now is to purchase it either with her own name or in the company's name. Now, before you advise someone, you need to also let the person know the advantages of each option that is open to him or her. It is when you have now explained all of this that this person will know, okay, I'm going to take this option and why I shouldn't take the other option. You should also note that a company is usually distinct from the person who owns the company. Now, a company maintains an independent identity. That is, if Mr. A owns a company, Mr. A is a person, a natural person, then the company is now Mr. B, an artificial person, a juristic person. Now, in Nigerian law, or under the law, both a natural person and an artificial person, in this case, it could be a company limited by liability or unlimited liability company, it could be a public company or private, whichever way. It can also be a union, it could also be a trustee or just an association, NGOs and all of that. Now, these ones are classified under juristic personality. they maintain juristic personality. This juristic personality, they have that corporate succession, perpetual succession. If the person who found a company today dies, the company continues to live as long as that company is not wound up. That's how it works. So this company continue to enjoy that right over that property. Even when the founder dies, whoever takes over that company continues to be the owner, and the company continues to run. That's how company works. But for a person, once the person dies, everything that the person owns passes to whoever the person has decided to give those property to in his will, or if the person failed to draft any will before his passing, then he divorce on the estate of that person, that is either the children, the wife, or any other person that is entitled to benefit from that estate of whoever has left the property behind. It could be male, it could be female. Now, are there advantages of purchasing a property under a company name? Yes, there are several of them. First, we'll be looking at, as I stated earlier, a company is always there. It doesn't have an end until you decide voluntarily to put an end to it, which is you wound up the company. The company has been wound up. That's when it ceases to exist. It means you have decided, okay, we have tried, we have done businesses, we have experienced excellence. Or if the business is also failing, you can also decide to wind up the company. And once this is done, the company ceases to exist. Until that is done, the company remains in existence even when the person that owns it dies. Now, how do you benefit from this? If you have a company, as I have told you that Mr. A who created the company is a different person, and the company that was created is a different person. When it comes to personal insolvency, let's say a judgment has been given against you. You had a transaction with someone, or you did something, maybe you did something that offended someone else that caused injury. Let's say Mr. A and Mr. B, they had issues at one point in time, and because of trying to resolve the issue or trying to show supremacy, Mr. A ends up causing injury, a grievous one, on Mr. B, or inflicting injury on Mr. B. Then Mr. B goes to court. Upon getting to court, he gets judgment, and that judgment now he's going to enforce it against Mr. A because of the injury that was inflicted on him. Now, when he's coming to enforce that judgment, he's going to attach all the assets where the money in the bank account of Mr. A is not enough. If you find out that the money in Mr. A's account is not enough to settle the judgment sum that has been entered in his favor, I'm talking about Mr. B now, who has gone to court and has gone to judgment. If the money in Mr. A's account will not be enough, the next thing to do is to attach the property of Mr. A. If Mr. A has a house, let's say in Banana Island or anywhere in the state of Lagos, the person, once that property is attached, the person loses the property. Mr. A will lose the property once it is attached in fulfillment of that judgment that was given against him. But if you own a property in the name of a company, excuse me, let's say you own A to Z Nigeria Limited, that is the company that you operate, but you purchase that property in the name of that A to Z Nigeria Limited, but your own name is Mr. AZ. Now, Mr. AZ is different from A to Z Nigeria Limited. When they come and they conduct a search, before they attach any property, they conduct a search to know if the property you are occupying, you are a tenant or you are the landlord of the house. If they conduct a search and find out that the property is in the name of the company, there is no way they can go against the company. They cannot attach the property because you are living in the property. No, that's not enough. There must be document to show that you actually own that that particular property that you are occupying before they can attach it and make it a judgment sum to fulfill whatever judgment that they have received. But because of this fact that you have purchased the property in the name of the company, the property becomes untouchable. So the property remains yours, but you will have nothing to attach in fulfillment of that judgment. So you are protected against any judgment that may be given to you personally in any court of law in Nigeria or anywhere else in the world, because you maintain a separate identity and your company too maintains a separate identity. Now, another thing you also understand is when you purchase a property in the name of a company, you are likely to pay a lesser tax when you are trying to register that property. You pay less for a property you acquire in the name of a company. But if you acquire that property in your own name, you are likely to pay more. Now, the thing is, as a company, you are already paying taxes to the government, and the government is earning from the business that the company is doing. But as an individual, the government may not be earning as much, but once you purchase a property, it shows that you have enough money at your disposal and you are going to pay more when you are going to register that property. Now, another advantage of purchasing a property in the name of your company is you don't pay estate duty. What do we mean by estate duty? Companies, by virtue of their registration, enjoys perpetual succession. Now, when we talk about perpetual succession, it means if Mr. A, who is the shareholder or the director of a company, goes, Mr. B comes on board as the new director and shareholder. So it doesn't have to go on to meet with the persons who are the land registry. Please, Mr. A is no longer the owner of the property. I am not the owner. I am the first child, or I got this property by virtue of the will my father left behind or my mother left behind. That's why I'm not the real owner. I want to register this property in my own name. That is not the case. So instead of going out there to register the land which has already been purchased, once a company is passed from one person to the other, the person continues to enjoy that ownership of that property because the property is owned in name of the company. At best, you can decide to just proceed to Corporate Affairs Commission, that is the CAC, go there, make application for the change of name of the company. Let's say you do not like the name that the company bears at the time you purchased the company, or the company became yours by virtue of your parent passing or someone who has gifted you the company passed. If you don't like the name, you can simply proceed to register or change the name of the company into a name that you prefer. Then that will be very, very much cheaper compared to you registering that property in your own name when it is passed to you as an individual. Also, you understand that when you go to the probate registry, you want to pass title. Before you can do that, to administer any property, you need to pay some certain amounts, maybe 10% of the value of the estate. Let's say your property is worth 100 million naira. You are going to pay 10% as estate duty to the government because you are transferring ownership from this person to the other, or to even administer it. But if it's a company that is in possession or in ownership of that company, nothing of such will come up because title is passed from one person to the other automatically. Once you assume office or once you assume ownership of that company, you assume ownership of everything that pertains to that company. So there is no room for transfer, change of signature on any property once the change of signature of the ownership of the company has been effected. Now, you also know that profits from company can be kept and reinvested without incurring additional taxes. That's one thing you also need to know. If you are making profits as an individual, you are doing business in your own name, or you earn salaries, all of this money, they can be taxed at any time. But if as a company you reinvest certain amount that has been gotten as a profit, then there will be no need to pay tax on that amount that is reinvested. But if you are doing that as an individual, you are going to pay taxes on that. So that's another advantage that you enjoy when you are owning a property in the name of your company. Now, another thing is it is easier to give property with reduced tax rate. Now, if you are going to give a property out as a gift to someone, the person also needs to go and register that property in his or her own name. It doesn't matter whether the property was given to this person freely or the person paid some money for that property, as long as there is change of ownership, you are going to pay certain amount to effect that change. What the government knows is that, okay, a change has been done. The person who owns it before is no longer the owner, and you are going to do fresh registration to reflect your own name. Without that registration, the property remains in the name of the former owner. And if they are going to move against the former owner, maybe the estate of the former owner has defaulted in one area or the other, they are going to attach that property. And we have had issues like that in the past where Mr. A, who owned a very big estate, transferred the estate to the daughter, but the daughter failed to change the name from the name of the father to her own name. At the end, when the father had issues, they went and attached that particular property, which has already been given to the daughter. But because the daughter failed to register the property in her own name, that property was attached, and that led to long legal battle that is still ongoing in court today. So this is what you can do to avoid that. How do you do this? You simply transfer the shares of the company to this new person who you want to be the owner. Let's say Mr. A has 4 children and he wants to give these 4 properties that he owns to different persons in his family. All he needs to do is to give shares to these different persons. That's one of the options he has. Give out shares to these different persons. Okay, take this one, 50% shares, 20% shares, and each of those shares, they will be valued at what is this person going to gain by owning these shares. And once that is settled, he goes on to enjoy that property. You don't need to pay any tax on that again. So you don't also do transfer duty. That's another thing you get to enjoy. Once you are passing title from the father to the daughter, or from the father to the son, you don't pay transfer duty. All you need to do is to effect the small fee that is payable on the CAC, payable to the CAC to effect change. Maybe you want to effect change of ownership of the company, and that is done by changing the shareholders. You transfer your shares. Mr. A transfers his shares to Mr. B, or from Mr. B to Mr. C, depending on who you want to give that particular property to. Once the shares of the company, let's say the total number of shares of a particular company is 1 million shares, and that person who is the owner of the company, who wants to give his property to his child, decides to give out the total 1 million shares to the child that he wants to give that property to. All he needs to do is to pay the cost of transfer of shares, which is very minimal. So you don't have to pay any further transfer again for the transfer of the ownership of the property by using deed of assignment or deed of transfer, whatever name that it may be called in a jurisdiction that you belong to. So it's usually different when you are doing transfer of ownership under company ownership of property. Then another thing you also need to consider is, even if you don't own a company at the moment, you just have you have already bought this property. Because of that, you have no much money left with you. What you can do is to register a new company. The property you already have that you have acquired, transfer them to the company. You can do a deed of gifts. You gift the property to the company. And once you gift the property to the company, you don't need to go through other processes again. So the property becomes comes under the ownership of the company. That's one way you can also come under this. Another thing you can do, maybe you already own a company, but the property just acquired, you have acquired it in your own name. Then you can also go ahead to transfer that property to your company's name. In all of this, they always say that if you have an advantage, there is also a disadvantage. What are the disadvantages of owning a property in name of your company, owning a property in name of your company? One thing you need to know is that higher taxes are paid by companies compared to individuals. If you are going to make a tax remittance, companies are usually required to pay higher than individual. Another thing you also understand is, for a company taking out a mortgage, they are going to charge the company a higher percent compared to when an individual approaches a financial institution, or even a independent person approach independent person for a mortgage. You need to understand also that for a company, they believe that a company is viable and a company is able to pay whatever amount, and the company might be desperate because it wants to survive. But for an individual, such may not be the case. So it's really cheaper for someone who is who has a property in his own name to get lower mortgage rate compared to a company. Then another amount is the amount of capital gains tax that a business must pay when selling a property is significantly higher. Now, if you decide not to sell your company, like the option that I proposed under the advantage, when you sell your company to the person who wants to purchase your property, and you decide to sell the property rather than the company, you are going to pay higher amounts when you are transferring title. You pay higher amounts because you are selling as a company. But when you sell the company, it makes it cheaper for you to do. Now, another thing that is important for you to note is the fact that if you are running a company, you are purchasing and selling in the name of a company, then it may be difficult for you sometimes to access certain loans, because more will be expected of you, how you have performed in the past, how is your profit, what is your annual turnover of last 5 years, last 10 years, how have you been servicing debts in the past. But for an individual, you may not have to go through all of that routes to get things done. I already told you that mortgage is more expensive for a company than for an individual. Now, there are a number of ways you can overcome all of these things, whether you are purchasing as an individual or you are purchasing as a company. One thing you also need to know is that to protect yourself against any challenge that may come up, maybe something like a dispute, you need to put relevant dispute resolution mechanism there. Now, why do you need this? When you are purchasing a property as an individual, you need to settle all disputes amicably first before resorting to court, which is usually more expensive and time consuming. Also, as a company, you need to do something similar. So if you want to transfer property, for instance, you need to ensure that you are dealing with the right persons. Don't deal with persons who do not have right to transact in that particular property that they want to engage you in that transaction. So you must ensure that the right persons are who you are dealing with. Now, also for intending owners of homes, also try to understand what that property has been used for in the past. If you don't know, you may not be able to enjoy the property when you eventually purchase that property. In summary, you need to ensure that if you are going to purchase a property in the name of a company, make sure you buy or you have enough companies if you are eventually going to transfer to your children. Like I said earlier, you don't have to pay estate duty. But if you have just one company and you have several children and you have several property under the same company, there might be a trouble at the end. So what you can do is, if you have 4 children, you can register 4 separate companies and ensure that each property is under the separate companies that you have registered. What you will then do is to make your children major shareholders in each of these companies. Let's say you have 4 children, A, B, C, D. What you can do is, A is the major shareholder in company A. You can just be a holder of 4% of the entire interest in the company, while A, who is your first son or your first child, owns 99% shares. Then same thing for company B, C, and D. When you do this, when you eventually pass, when you go to the other side of the world, then you still have persons who are going to run that company and the property separately without any dispute. If your child knows that, okay, I own this company and this property attached to it is mine, there will be no time for that child to go to the other property that is owned by the other person and the person who owns that property also owns a company that is attached or affiliated to that property. So you have settled that dispute that would have arisen after you have left them behind. So that's what you can do. Also, if you are going to own a property in the name of your company, also consider what may happen in the future. If you are one who is likely to take loan and you are going to mortgage your property, then you should rather own that property in your own personal name. You can then mortgage the property and reinvest whatever money